going to have Tony present us. He was born and raised in Warangal, India. This is in the Andhra Pradesh section of India. It's kind of down in the south. He grew up in a Baptist church. He in a very devout Christian home. Tony has a very interesting family. His dad was among the first to convert to Christianity back when, I assume it was Western missionaries?
Yes, dad's family.
Yeah, okay, his family, when Western missionaries came in. So his mother is a daughter of a Lutheran pastor, and he came to faith in 2000 in his hometown, and he was baptized shortly after that. He came to the States to study at University of Houston in 2006, and he's been attending Wilcrest since 2008 on. Tony's mother is passed on with the Lord. His father's in India, and his sister is briefly with us still in Houston. So, Tony, we're excited to hear what you have to say.
All right. Good afternoon. So, I'd like to take this time to talk about a few things in India about Christianity, its history and theology in particular. As you guys have heard, that my family, both my parents' side, by my dad's family and my mother's family, they came to faith in about 1880s, somewhere around that time frame. So, we've been Christian as a family, right? Not everybody's Christian in the family, but we've come to faith about 100 years or so. The church that I grew up in, it's called Centenary Baptist Church. It's a 100-year-old church, so it's kind of a historic church in that area. But briefly, to understand Christianity in India, what we're doing is we're trying to understand history. So I want to give some pointers for all of us, just to set the tone of how to understand history, so that we will be able to understand the facts that we're taking in and do justice to the facts. And sometimes we who are in the church have a tendency to take in information that is kind of a historical information that is given to us and theologize it really quickly. And by doing so, we miss other parts of that information, right? So we have to be careful. And the first part of the information that I'm giving to you right now will be historical in nature, right? So it's not theological in nature. I'm not making any theological pronouncements as such. So we need to hold back on that. From a Christian standpoint, we know that God is the author of history. God is the one that is writing history as we speak. God is the author of history. The scriptures are very clear that the Lord is the owner of everything. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof and everything that dwells in it. That is the Christian understanding of history. And then we come to New Testament, and the texts are very clear that God is working his redemptive purposes towards an ultimate goal, right? So we have a starting point and an ending point in terms of Christian history and how we understand history. So in a sense, technically speaking, Christian understanding of history is teleological, right? So telos is there's an end, so teleological is towards an end. So we have a starting point and ending point. There's a beginning and the end. There's a purpose and a goal of history. So history is moving towards that goal. Understanding history then becomes a complex aspect of trying to gather information. History involves a lot of things: social, economical, political, theological factors. So whenever we try to understand history, be it American history, be it Indian history, any history has all these factors like built into it. Nothing happens in vacuum, right? Nothing just happens just because of theological reasons. For example, I will say that Martin Luther did not have the success that he had in Germany only because of theological reasons. There were socioeconomical, political reasons that helped him to get to where he wanted to get to, right? So the ideas and the issues that we face with are complex. History of Christianity, in general, I wanted to give a timeline of what we're speaking. As we know, church was born in Jerusalem on the day of Pentecost, and then from that point onwards, we see that the church is expanding towards the ends of the earth, right? So the early church is about 30 AD to 350 AD. That's the period in which church was just expanding in the Greco-Roman Empire, right? So that's the early church. In the Middle Ages, begin from 350 AD to about 1500 AD, because that is the time where the Christendom has begun, right? So Constantine becomes the first Christian emperor, and the entire Roman Empire becomes Christian, right? From an outlook, from a high-level political structure standpoint. So that is the period we call as the Middle Ages. And then from that point onwards, we have the Reformation, right? So the Christian theological debate, it's an internal debate in the Roman Catholic Church, the Reformation, so 1500 to about 1600, and then by the end of the Reformation period, we have a split, like the church splits. Protestantism is out of the Catholic Church, so that period we call it as Reformation. And then the age of reason that follows 1600 AD to 1900 AD, it is the age of reason, revival, and mission. Right? So this is the time period. So those two periods that I have right there are the periods that are in focus where India would come into play, right? The discussion that we are having right now, India kind of has a place of prominence in those times, right? Those two red periods. The reason why we call that as age of reason, revival, and missions is because we know that from history that just past the Reformation, we see a movement growing within the Western Church, which is called the Enlightenment, right? So the age of reason. So this is the age of philosophical reasoning. This is the age of scientific discoveries. This is the age where the territories that have not been chartered in terms of sea voyages and everything else have happened. So this is the age of reason in that sense, right? And then it's also an age of revival, because if in the 1700s, both Britain and North America have seen great workings of God, which we call the Great Awakenings, right? The first Great Awakening and the second Great Awakenings, which laid the foundation for the United States and the culture surrounding United States as well. So it is an age of revival. And past that age of revival, we have a time period where the people that were enlightened or invigorated in a way because of the revival that have taken place, they now saw the need to evangelize the rest of the world, right? So that led to a season in Western Church for mission. Now, because the sea routes are now available, and there are options to go to other uncharted territories in the world, it also played a major role, that period of time, in expanding Christianity to the rest of the world. And then we come to the modern period from 1900 onwards to the present. So, people can debate that modern period is over and we are now in the postmodern world, but that's not the point of discussion today. All right, so I want to help us locate geographically where we are, what we're talking about as when we say India. So I created a little video. Hopefully this is helpful. So as you can see, I'm looking at the United States right now. So we will move over a little bit. So we're going to move westward, and then we will see that there's the great continent of Africa there. North of Africa is Europe, and then we see that this is the region that is west of Africa is Asia there, right? So where the mouse is hovering, that is India, and we will zoom in, and that is India, and we will further zoom in, and we will see some cities and some states that are in India, and we'll go further deep a little bit. One of the first points of interest for our discussion today would be Kolkata. So that's where the mouse is zooming there. It's Kolkata. That's where William Carey operated. And then we'll go south a little bit in a moment. And that's Kolkata there. That's towards the east coast, like further east of India. Kolkata was the capital of the British colonies for a certain period of time. So that was the reason Carey was able to get there. And then we come further down, that is Chennai. Some of us here in church have connections there. And then there's another important city that is called Bangalore. It's called Bengaluru right now. That's another city you probably would be hearing. The state that is north of it, where the mouse is hovering right now, that is Hyderabad. It's another big city in India. And then you would hear Mumbai a lot in the news. So that's the west coast of India. And then we go further north, and we will see the national capital, which is Delhi. Right? And for our discussion today, we will be focusing on Carrie's work a little bit. And then we will go further down from where I come from, the state of Andhra Pradesh, where the mouse is hovering right now. It's Andhra Pradesh. It's the Telugu-speaking region where we will encounter some Baptist missionaries as we will progress in this discussion. So I hope that is helpful for us to situate ourselves geographically speaking. So India has been called a subcontinent during British times. Indian subcontinent, you see that yellow region and the green region and surrounding places, it's been called the subcontinent of India. It's not as big as a continent would be, but it has all the features of a continent. It has its own unique climate, unique geography, and unique culture. And it is surrounded by the Himalayas in the north and the desert region in the northwest, and that kind of makes the region difficult to get to, and that's one of the reasons civilizations have flourished there for quite a few times. And it was one of the regions that many parts of the world wanted to get to, and this sea voyage was the only way to get there. So the subcontinent comprises of India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. In fact, there are about 1,600 languages and dialects spoken there, 2,500 people groups, and about 1.7 billion people, according to 2015 census, live in that region. It's one of the most densely populated regions of the world. And coming to understanding the society there, India is a highly stratified society. What I mean by that is there are levels of hierarchy. There are levels of hierarchy in India where people would be placed because of their birth. Right? It is a highly stratified society. There are 4 major caste groups. So the strata are called castes in India. There are different terms that people use, but 4 major caste groups. So you see that the Brahmins there is the priestly class. The Kshatriyas are the warrior class, and the Vaishyas there are the merchants, and Sudras are laborers. And there are people groups that are outside of these major classes. These are called the outcasts. You probably have heard the word pariah, right? Pariah means the one does not belong, right? So it's the outcasts, the untouchables, the scavengers. So in reality, there are 5 groups of people, 5 different castes, but outcasts do not belong in the caste system. Higher castes have purity rituals that they follow strictly, have restrictions in interaction with other people. Higher castes do not eat together with lower castes. Hospitality was only practiced among peers, so you would only be hospitable to your own strata, your own caste. Typically, there will be no intermarriage among castes, but like the rest of the world, India is changing. Present time, social practices are quite fading away, except in marriage. Marriage is a little exception, but modern India, you would not hear these kinds of things, but this is the kind of history where we come from. In Christianity in India, historically, it's been told that the Apostle Thomas landed in Kerala, which is the southernmost state. It has been told that there was a Jewish population there already prior to Thomas's arrival that helped him to get there. They spoke Syrian and Aramaic, and that also helped him there. So Thomas landed in Kerala and did ministry and did establish some churches there. And we also see some attestation of Thomas's work by early Greek fathers in their writings as well. So it is challenged a little bit because there are no remains. There are no relics as such, like the church that he has established. But there are people that claim that they come from the line where Thomas had brought them Christianity. So it is that based on that evidence we can say that Thomas was there. But there has been Jewish presence in that region for a long, long time, and they still are there. So they practice what is the Syrian Orthodox Church. So they come from the eastern wing of European churches, right? Not the western wing. Western wing is the Roman Catholic wing, right? Which we kind of are inheritors of, traditionally speaking, but they are the eastern wing. So they come from the Syrian Orthodox side of Christianity. Thomas is believed to have been murdered, persecuted and murdered in Chennai. There is a Catholic church at his burial site. So there's a place called St. Thomas Mount, and there's a Catholic church where he is believed to have been buried. So just to give an idea, that's the map of India, and you would see that in the bottom there, that's what Kerala is, the southernmost west state. So India in the colonial era. So that is Thomas in 1st century, and no Christian activity of any reportable measure has taken place during those centuries. In the middle, from 1st century to 1600s, no Christian activity is reported as such. The churches that have been established by the Syrian Orthodox Church were operating, but they did not quite expand for various reasons. They did not quite expand to the other parts of India for many different reasons. But you see Christian activity taking place in the colonial era, that is 1602 to 1947. 1947 is a historical marker because India was declared independent of the British rule in 1947. So 1602 to 1947 is the time frame where India was under colonial rule. So you would see Portuguese East India Company, Dutch East India Company, Danish East India Company, French India Company, the British rule. So all these East India companies, if you think about it, they came for trade, especially for the spice trade. That is the reason why they ventured into the land. And they are East India companies, so they're official companies, and they were actually publicly traded in some places in Europe. So there was a public interest as well that people wanted to put their stocks into these companies. So it was a serious business of trade and commerce at that time. So the British entered India with business reasons, trade and commerce reasons in India. But as time progressed, they saw that with their military power, they could help some local rulers against others, right? So they helped local rulers, and with that power, they gradually gained some allies, and which eventually became the British Empire altogether, right? So that's the kind of a progression. So the British East India Company had trade reasons. The reason why it entered, the reason why it continued to work was because of the trade reasons. They saw the resources, they saw that these goods that they can get from here would be very profitable if they sold them, right? So that is the primary motive of the British East India Company. And the British East India Company was chartered by Parliament as a wing of the government in 1757. And further down in 1858, the British Raj means state, British Raj was declared as an official colony or an entity of the Crown itself. So it became a country under the Commonwealth of the British Crown, right? So that's 1858, and then in 1947 we see that India was given independence. So this is the political aspect that I'm talking about, right? So Brian talked about this, colonial intents, impacts, and side effects, right? So the colonial intents were purely business reasons and political reasons. The side effect of that is that it gave missionaries an opportunity to go and do missionary work. So that is the side effect. I will not spend time talking about the intents because we talked about it already, but the side effect of the colonial role is the spread of Christianity in that region. Widespread Protestant Roman Catholic activity, you will see that widespread presence of Protestants and Roman Catholics all throughout India during this time. Establishment of educational institutions and hospitals. So the British did do some social reforms in education and in healthcare. Notable Protestant presence during this time would be of Church of England. You will see Baptists, you will see Presbyterian missionaries, Methodist and Wesleyan missionaries all across the board during this time frame in India. A prominent figure of this time is William Carey. You might have heard about him. William Carey is a cobbler by profession in India. He was deeply influenced by Andrew Fuller, a Baptist, a contemporary of William Wilberforce. So that is the time frame where William Carey lived in England. So that's his picture. He wrote what is called the Enquiry, right? He wrote this paper and presented to a group of Baptists seeing the need for the spread of the gospel, right? It's called An Enquiry into the Obligations of Christians, that is Baptists in England, to use means for the conversion of the heathens. So, right? So, yeah. So we would be very careful using a title like that today, but that's the way they spoke, right? Again, history is history. That's how they spoke. We're not making any theological or any conclusions yet. So that was his intent, and he founded this society, a particular Baptist society, for the propagation of the gospel among the heathen. Right. So that's the name of the society he founded in Kettering, England. Later, this society became Baptist Missionary Society. Okay. Right. He is a great man of God. He is of exceptional faith. Some of the greatest quotes that he spoke about mission work are still used today in seminaries and such. One of the things that he said was, "I expect great things from God, attempt great things for God." Right? He saw the need. He saw an avenue. He saw a political, socio-economical window that could be used for the saving of the people. Right? This man is a pastor, a missionary at heart. Right? The time frame didn't matter. Right? He had a heart for the gospel. He arrived in Calcutta, 1793, aided by the Danish in Serampore outside of Calcutta, and he started his work. He's an exceptional linguist. He spoke many languages and he learned many languages. So if you can see the map, the new map there, so see that western corner there where Carey operated there. He did pioneering work in Bible translation. The Bible was translated into 35 languages at that time. He had his first convert in 1802. He landed in 1793, right? So see the struggle of a missionary. First converts in 1802. He supported several social reforms with the native leaders. One of very important note is of sati, right? Sati is the burning of widows on their husbands' funeral pyres alive. All right? He was instrumental in the abolishment of that practice. So missionaries in India were not just, doing theological Christian work, and they were not, unaware of the social ills of their day. And Carey set that example, and you would see everywhere you see Christian missionaries in India, their biographies are full of these kinds of things that they fought against. Pioneering work in education. Serampore College is the oldest standing college in India. It is still operating today. It was established in 1818. He's called the father of modern missions. And that's the college. It's still standing today. And continuing our talk about Christianity in colonial era, we see that several missionary organizations have taken part at that time. Church Missionary Society, it's a Church of England's affiliate. William Wilberforce was a founding member of that society. British East India Company was allowed a charter through the Parliament to allow missionaries to do free work in 1813. And behind that is William Wilberforce, who was the Member of Parliament at that time. If you know anything about Wilberforce, he was a social activist. He was the one that worked towards the abolishment of slave trade in England at that time, right? So Wilberforce also worked towards modifying the clauses in the East India Company's way of operation, that they should allow missionary work because he saw the need. He said, it is our Christian responsibility to do something about their social structures while we are getting benefited from the trade that we are receiving from these lands, right? So moving on, we see because of that charter, the first Anglican episcopate was established. London Missionary Society had a prominent presence in India at that time. Society of Propagation of Christian Knowledge in Foreign Parts. This is again a Church of England's entity. And then finally, American Baptist Foreign Missionary Society also played a significant part in that region, mostly because of Carey's influence on Adoniram Judson, who is an American. And Adoniram Judson came back from India after he met with Carey and founded the American Baptist Foreign Missionary Society. And that is the forerunner for our IMB today. Right? That organization is our forerunner. This was the time where North and South conventions, the Baptist conventions, were together. Right? American Baptist Foreign Missionary Society is the society with which our family had come to faith, right? So that's the focus now. So we talked about Carey on a very large scale. We're just looking at another small portion of India where we see Baptist presence. They operated a large missionary enterprise at that time in South India, Assam, and Bhutan. That is Burma, and that is Adoniram Judson's work in Burma there. Among the Telugus in South India, American Baptist Missionary Society had huge success, not without pain and struggle, but they did have huge success. Their first Telugu mission station was established in Nellore in the 1830s, and their first convert is in 1841. Their first church was established in 1844. These are churches that are called ABM churches, American Baptist Mission Churches, and later they became Telugu Baptist churches after the missionaries left. Mass conversions took place in this region, in the Telugu-speaking region. At one instance in 1878 in the Ongole area, 8,691 converts were taken into the church by baptism within a 6-month period. Right? So God moved powerfully in a certain time frame there. So just a reference of what happened there. That's the region I'm talking about in India. The man behind all these things is John Clow for these mass conversions. John Clow was born in 1836. He is born in New York, raised in Iowa, and arrived in India in 1865. A pioneer of Telugu missions and of Baptists in the region. Mass conversions took place, literally thousands. The one example that I gave is one instance. There are thousands of converts under his missionary work. A region named after him is called Clowpate today. People still remember him. Pate means town in a loose sense. So they named a little town by his name. That's how influential his work was at that time. Looking into Clow's ministry, I've read his biography, and one thing that comes out clearly was that he always says, "I preached Christ crucified. I preach Christ crucified. And he always says, the Lord Jesus makes no mistakes. The Lord Jesus makes no mistakes, no matter how or difficult the circumstances are. He was meticulous in taking converts. He would not allow people into the church without a strict interview process and a vetting process and making sure that they have come to faith before he baptizes them and admits into the church. So he was a true Baptist in that sense. At a later time, he was a little puzzled by the number of people that wanted to come into the church, these mass movements. So he actually delayed the whole process. Like, I'm not going to allow anybody in 3 months, and because there are too many in number. Right? He didn't know what to do. He wasn't sure, are they coming because of true genuine faith, or are they seeing some sort of a liberation or some sort of economical gain, or so he was confused about it for a certain time. Through a series of events, he's finally convinced that these are true converts. At a later time, he said of these converts, Jesus kept them all safe till the end. So a true pastor, he called his converts brothers, right? Which might not sound significant for us, but it is an unknown thing for an untouchable to be a brother of a dignified man, right? It is an unknown thing. He is making history, right? If you read his biography, there are some moving accounts of this where people literally are in tears because they heard a pastor, a man of this great stature, calling them as brothers in the church. So, man of great heart there. He fought against caste in the church. He admitted the untouchables into the church, even when the higher caste, the Brahmins, resisted. They said that if these untouchables are coming into the church, we will not be under the same roof. And he said, my church will be open to anybody that walks in. All right. He understood the Telugu societal structure really well. He kept the 5 elders system that those societies operated at that time, and he retained it in the church, and he made sure that those people that he would call one of the 5 elders are qualified elders in a biblical sense. So he kept those kinds of things intact. So it's a fascinating biography if you are interested. So Christianity and social structures in India. Missionaries worked to uproot several social ills. The caste system and sati are one of the very few examples I can quote. They fought against a lot of things. The upper castes mostly rejected Christianity. The lower caste received Christianity. The untouchables came in droves into the church. Right? Mass conversions took place among the untouchables. And when the British left in 1947, the Protestant church took firm roots in many parts of India, and especially South India. So we're moving now from the colonial era into a present-day context. India is officially 2% Christian. That accounts for about 28 million people. Several missionary established churches still exist. There are major denominations that are present in India. The Church of England, when it left finally, formed 2 new denominations, Church of South India and Church of North India. So there are 2 major church denominations that are inherited from the Church of England. There is a strong presence of Roman Catholic Church. Every major city that you go to India, you will find a Catholic church, a Catholic college, a Catholic postgraduate college, and a Catholic hospital. Roman Catholics are present everywhere. There are Baptist churches, mostly in the South, but there is strong Baptist presence as well. Several independent movements have born out of the Protestants' experience, and there are several independent churches even today. And then there is India Pentecostal Church, a strong presence of that church as well in India today. Just to give you a glimpse, this is the church building of the church I grew up in. Right, the building is about 60, 70 years old, but the church was established in 1893. So the building is a little younger than the church itself. Culturally speaking, Christianity in India follows a mix of Western and Indian traditions. For example, the weddings and deaths are performed in Western customs. Again, what's the big deal? It is a big deal. Most Indian cultures perform cremation. and it has religious significances. And missionaries have moved them out of, and then they bury their dead. Weddings are performed in a Western fashion with some Indian mix to it. For example, like this. You'll see all kinds of flowers that you can ever see. So we have the whale. And you probably have seen them. These are my friends that come to visit sometimes. Women have a prominent place in the church operation. The missionaries have introduced a role called a Bible women. And these are evangelists. These are your school teachers. And they go into the villages to preach the gospel. And the context, again, is important, right? They are coming from a society where women did not have anything to do apart from staying in the house, right? And missionaries have overturned that. They gave a purpose and a meaning and a Christian duty to them, right? Regular Sunday worship is with hymns and a sermon, and I mean, for me, church experience is no different from what I experience here and going back home, except men and women sit apart, right? So women sit onto my right side, and men sit onto the left side, and they sit apart in the church worship. I don't know the historical reason for it, by the way. A simple picture there. These are the Bible women in 1879. You see the missionaries there, and then standing behind are all the Bible women. All right, so there's some interesting history that I've come across while preparing to present this. The dress and food remains indigenous, right? So we have not quite modified our food habits or dress habits as such. All right. So let's take a break from all these historical things and think about theology, right? Think about theology and see what was John Clow's central message. Why did he have so many mass conversions? Why was he so impactful, right? John Clow, again, is dealing with all kinds of strata, right? So he's not, if you read his biography, he's not holding back the gospel from anybody. He's a man who says, my church, my mission compound, my house will be open for anybody that walks in. So he followed it. But when you see the responses that he got, most of the responses that he got were from the lower strata. The higher caste, there were higher caste converts, don't get me wrong, but the numbers are pale compared to the untouchables that came into the church. One of the things that he would constantly say is, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest, right? So he's talking to people who are laborers, who do not have a place in the society, and they hear God's message that they can come to God for comfort, right? So that's a powerful thing. A God who understands pain and suffering, a God who is near, right? And Christ is the friend of the anonymous, right? Philip in John 1:46 says that, can anything good come out of Nazareth, right? We should understand the context in which that is spoken. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Because Nazareth is not a prominent town. Nazareth is not a prominent town. Good only comes from Jerusalem, right? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? But Jesus comes from Nazareth, right? That is significant because Jesus intentionally embraces the anonymous, right? So Christ embraced anonymity, suffered shame and disgrace, right? And Christ shows solidarity. This is a society, again, it's a highly stratified society. Shame and honor are embedded into the layered structure of the caste system. Christ displays greatest solidarity toward those who suffer at the cross, right? And God is making a new humanity in Christ in the gospel. We know scriptures that say there is neither Jew, nor Greek, nor male, nor female, nor barbarian, nor Scythian, but we are all one in Christ, right? God is breaking down those social barriers. God is breaking down those distinctions. He's creating a new humanity in Christ, right? So the gospel aims to create a new humanity. And we see the message of these Baptist missionaries there. There are other reasons, as we can say, as we are trying to understand history again. There are socio-political reasons. No, I'm sorry, I'm missing. So that is the theology that we talked about. So current challenges in Christianity, there are socio-political challenges right now. Persecution towards new converts from Hindu families. If there are people that are coming to faith newly, unlike me, who doesn't have like any connection, familially speaking, to a Hindu heritage. When I grew up in India, or my family, like both sides of my family are Christian in the outlook. So I do not know the experience of that. But people who come to faith and they have Hindu families that they're leaving behind, persecution comes in many different forms. And there is widespread persecution and hostility towards Christianity at a societal level in rural parts of India, where it is still a highly stratified society, right? So caste is still present. India is called the number 11th most dangerous places for Christianity. This is Christianity Today's census. It is number 11 in terms of persecution. It is the most dangerous place. So there are quite a few challenges for Christians there. There are theological challenges in Indian Christianity. Typically today is under the spell of the prosperity gospel. It's prevalent. There are televangelists all over the place. People watch all kinds of things. There are Christian TV channels that export prosperity gospel from the U.S. to India, and it's available. So that's one of the things that the church struggles with today. And other factors include they're very small in number. They're 2%. Missiologists say that for Christianity to take root in any society, they have to reach this critical mass, and that critical mass is 2% or more. Otherwise, Christianity will not survive. Right? So they're a minority in many different places. Historians also say that Christianity is always one generation away from extinction. Right? So because it's a faith that is passed on, not just by family, but it is a faith that is passed on by teaching, by calling people to Christ. It just doesn't happen even within our families. We have to understand that. Indian Christians, socioeconomically, they're not quite influential because of their background. Again, right? These are the people that came because of the missionary effort, and most of them have connections to the untouchables, right? So they're not quite influential, but there are some bright lights, as we can say, that have taken up the opportunity that were provided for them and rose up in the social ladder. But again, there are challenges there. So persecution, bad theology, small in number, I would say, would be the three things that Indian Christians face today. With that, my presentation is to an end. Any questions? It seems to have been a whirlwind thing, but 45 minutes.
Do you plan to stay in the U.S. or do you plan to go back to India to do ministry?
I do not know. It's open question right now. Yes.
Hasn't there been a change from the Indian government in the last 2 years that specifically prohibits Christian missionaries?
That is true. So the current government took charge of the office about 3 years ago, and it is a very Hindu nationalistic government. And like Brian was talking about, there is this rise of nationalism since the colonial era has ended. So it is the ruling party that is, in operation right now is that nationalistic Hinduistic party right now. And that's the reason why we do see a rise in persecutions. Like India was not at number 11 just 4 or 5 years ago, right? But we do see a lot of news just in the past 2 to 3 years. The political climate is changing, and we see the effects of it in the society.
As I wonder, with all the famous preachers of today, if any untouchables have been promoted in Indian culture and actually risen above the caste system to become a prominent preacher in India today.
So, are you saying that the untouchables have they risen
any
to?
Untouchables, are they accepted, one, and has any of them become a famous evangelist in India?
Evangelist? They have certainly risen up the ladder for sure, right? So I have a friend, and her mother is a chief magistrate of a region, right? So that's a significant achievement, right? So I have several friends who are higher up in the government structures, and all of these people in all of these families, we know that they were taught by the missionaries. They went to schools that were established by missionaries. They were taken in, right? They did not belong in the societal ladder at all. They were taken in, they were given education, and now we see the effects of it. As far as being an evangelist is concerned, there are several evangelists that I know, that my family knows, and they're not in the limelight. They're doing their work in the rural parts. There are several people like that that are doing the Lord's work faithfully, who come from those kinds of backgrounds. Have they been as influential as they can? I don't know. That's a debatable thing to say.
The caste system is societal, so it's also based in Hindu religion, right?
Yes, it finds its origin in the Hindu teachings, in the Hindu sacred scriptures, where I'm sorry.
Sorry. No.
Yeah, so it finds its origin there. Well, I spoke about it in a previous class, where the higher castes are they're coming from the head of Brahma. The middle class, or the middle class, they're the warriors. They come from the arms, and so it goes down that way. So it's taught that your caste is given to you biologically because of your karma, right? So because of your good deeds tally with your bad deeds, you get a better caste in your next life, and then you move on further, right? So this is it's not a teleological world; it's a circular world, right? So you're in the circle, and somebody needs to yank you out of the circle to have a new life in a way. Yeah, so it is deeply theological from a religious standpoint.
Is your family, personal family and friends in the area where y'all live, had any persecution? Any Christians in your immediate area, family, whatever?
No,
Persecution?
not to the nature that could be reported. Like you would see one or two things that could happen.
A few little incidents.
Yeah, a few little incidents here and there, but not to the degree of anything that I know of my immediate family as such. But so the South Christians are very well respected. There are educational institutions that are run by Protestants and Catholics. My mom worked in a Catholic school, all her life, and those in the South, Christians are respected because of the contributions that they have given to the rest of the society, partly because their presence took firm root, right?
Yeah.
So that critical mass, we are about 10% in the region, Christian, than population-wise. So that makes a difference again, right? So, politically speaking, they look to us as one of the minorities that they can cater to, politically speaking, not somebody that they could shun away, but because
They can get a benefit
Right,
from
right.
the Christians there.
right. So it's a different climate. Again, you move regions.
Yeah.
one place to the other, the climate changes. North is typically antagonistic towards Christianity. The South is not.
One more question. Is the caste system breaking down?
Not entirely. So the social practices, like, I don't enter somebody else's house, kind of a thing, is not there anymore, I would say, at least in big cities, and as people are getting educated and more aware of things. But people still do marry within their caste, so it still has some hold, right? All right. So some of the practices are getting modified here and there, but it is deeply rooted into the religious system. Unless that religious system is toppled down, I don't know how you do it.